welcome back to Breaking Point on Real America's Voice News, channel 219 on Dish Network, 240 on Pluto.tv. We're very fortunate to have with us right now Ari Hoffman. He's the associate editor and Seattle correspondent for the Post Millennial. He's a small business owner, former politician. He exposed failing socialist policies in Seattle. He's a former New Yorker. Ari Hoffman, welcome to the show.
How you doing? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. These are really important conversations right now because we're trying to save our country. These blue state cities are in despair. New York, crime is up on the subway 200%. Shootings are up 110%. Murders are up 30% for the year. Grand theft autos are through the roof. And that's what happened in Seattle too, right? They were desecrating cemeteries and businesses, and the zone prevented businesses from operating, right?
When that autonomous zone was happening and the Seattle mayor was on CNN calling it the summer of love, crime spiked 250%. The 911 response rate time was over 18 minutes. That's how bad it got here. Now, mind you, last year in 2020, we had doubled the number of homicides that we had in the city from the previous year. That is the result of this defund the police movement.
Well, it's really sad. And like New York City police officers are being put in the position of being psychological counselors and mental health counselors too. And, they're avoiding these areas that have no, so they're filling hotels up in the Upper West Side with homeless, but there's no support services, in these beautiful neighborhoods that were family-oriented neighborhoods. I worked with the Giuliani administration in the 90s as a builder's rep, and we cleaned up New York, and it's a complete reversal. And all of these cities, Minneapolis, crime is through the roof. I think, and then the brutal lockdowns have taken probably 20% of the GDP away from America, I'm estimating it at. And we lost 10, 12,000 restaurants in New York City already, 1/3 of a small business. Same thing in Seattle, right? How do these businesses survive?
Oh, they don't right now. If you go to downtown Seattle, the place looks like a ghost town. It looks like the set of a zombie apocalypse movie. And since I have you on the line here, thank you for all you did to clean up New York, because I was a beneficiary of it. I used to live in Manhattan. I used to go to school in Manhattan. And I remember watching it transition from this place that was just a cesspool to a really nice city to live in. And those hotels you mentioned on the Upper West Side, don't forget, in the 70s and stuff, they were homeless shelters. Yeah. So we've really come full circle right back to that. And it seems like they flushed all the progress right down the toilet. Here in Seattle, I don't know how the businesses make a comeback, because we're based on tech, and the tech companies are moving out of the downtown corridor. They don't want to be in Seattle anymore. They're overtaxed. They were still, the Seattle City Council was raising taxes while all this insanity was going on. So a lot of them moved out. They're not coming back. The restaurants are closed up. If you go down there, there's nothing there except for homeless people wandering the streets.
Well, the last number I saw in New York City was that only 14% of the office space has been reoccupied since the original COVID lockdown. And, and think about that devastating number, right? Where is the sales tax going to come from? We haven't seen the hits yet. And I'm in construction in New York also, and development. Our costs have gone up 2- and 3-fold just in the last year for OSB board, wall board, lumber, drainage pipe and stuff. So we're getting hit with like a double, triple whammy. And our bureaucracies in New York government, it's taken like a year to get a building permit in some cases. So this compounding effect, and then we have these crazy governors in these states, really devastating.
Well, it's so much more than that. I mean, it's every single industry costs are going up because so many of them were hit so badly. I have a company that's an event rental company, and I had to sell it. And as I'm watching all the forums that I was in with regards to this group, everybody's raising their prices through the roof. Everything's going to go up. Inflation's going to go sky high because of this stimulus package. And people are like, oh, I got my $1,400 check. You're really going to regret that down the road when you realize the implications of what that means, of how much more expensive everything else got. I mean, yes, there are people who need it right now, but think about how they're bailing out all these blue states, all these blue governors, all these blue municipalities because they misspent the money.
So it goes back to Governor Cuomo. We know de Blasio is like a Sandinista marching around in his uniform. He used to work for Daniel Ortega, so we know where he's coming from. But Andrew Cuomo has been vicious. He's been vicious. He said, if you're a conservative, you're not welcome in New York. If you're a gun owner, you're not welcome in New York. So his policies were already bad. And then we had bail reform, which was devastating. You could commit one of 400 crimes in New York, and you can't be held on bail. Anything short of kidnapping and bank robbery and murder. So, now we have the lockdowns. He was brutal. He killed our seniors. I almost don't care about the harassment stuff, even though if he did it, it's wrong, whatever. But he needs to be called out on these brutal policies. So what's going on with him? And is this a leftist attempt to get rid of Cuomo? Because I don't think these attacks are coming from the right on him.
Well, I think he's outlived his usefulness for them, and they realized they could replace him with somebody like the Attorney General, Letitia James. Don't forget, she's the one who outed him with those numbers. Everybody had their theories, everybody had their suspicions, but nobody could actually prove anything. It was a Democrat who outed him. So for some reason, they've decided he's no longer useful. And I think what they're doing is, with the sexual harassment stuff and everything else, not saying it isn't legit, but what they're trying to do is take away attention from the fact that the governor of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Washington, Michigan, all did the exact same thing with sending COVID positive patients into the nursing homes. And now nobody's talking about that because all they can talk about is the salacious sex scandal. So they're trying to distract from that. Notice how the Democrats have ridden on a white horse to the rescue of Gavin Newsom against a recall effort of him in California, but have thrown Andrew Cuomo under the bus. They must feel they got somebody more left who they can replace him with, and that they can win that election. And they may feel that in California, they got nobody to replace him with, and he's the best option they have. They have Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, Stacey Abrams, and the entire Democratic Party helping against this recall effort in California. And meanwhile, everybody who's a Democrat in New York has thrown Cuomo under the bus.
I'm really afraid on the policy that could replace him because, he's been terrible, with a lot of things in the lockdown. But he did have some positive components in dealing with legislation for builders in the state and economic incentives and solar and all this stuff. But, overall, he's a bully. He's a bully. He's the real bully. They call Trump the bully. Trump never restricted anybody's rights, never took away anybody's rights. This is real stuff. People can't, execute their business. We lost 450,000 people out of 8.5 million people in the boroughs already in New York City to other states. They're all going to Florida. They're all going to these red states. The same thing in Seattle, right? I was just with the governor of South Dakota, and they're saying all the people are coming from the West Coast to come there for tech and stuff.
People are moving out of Seattle in record numbers. Now, the interesting thing is Seattle's housing market is still really hot. I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last for because so many people moved out of downtown Seattle to the surrounding areas. But at the same time, according to U-Haul, Atlas Van Lines, and the United States Post Office, people are getting out of Seattle as fast as they can. They're moving to Idaho. They're moving to Texas. They're moving to Florida. But they want out of here because of how restrictive this is. I'm watching on Facebook. I just see my friends from New York and Seattle, and they're all heading to Florida. It seems like they're looking for that freedom, and they want out.
Well, they do want their freedom. Florida has half the infection rates of the rest of the country and half the deaths in New York per capita, and they never really closed. But, there's still mask mandates by the corporate America really runs this country. These 17 states lift the mandate for the mask, but, Bank of America dragged a woman out in cuffs yesterday, 2 days ago in Texas. They still have the mask policy for public supermarket and everything. So I don't know, how real it is that this mandate's lifted. I just wanted to talk about, the housing market in New York City, too. I'm out in the suburbs outside New York City. We're booming, but it's artificial, right? It's temporary. And I'm really worried about the sales tax revenue not coming into the cities, into these counties and everything. Is there anything you want to leave us with today and get the message out about how we can fix this?
Well, here's the thing to be worried about is what else is on the way. Don't forget that bail reform law was based on a law in Seattle that was very, very similar. And all the policies you're seeing of throwing the homeless into hotels and such, these were all policies that originated in Seattle before the pandemic. Seattle is the canary in the coal mine for the West Coast. So people got to pay attention to what's happening out here because this is the trial run. It fails, and then they package it, process it, and ship it off to the East Coast. We saw it with regards to mail-in voting. It's the exact same thing. We've had it for over 10 years, and we've had problems the whole time. These are things people need to keep an eye on, and they need to pay attention to what's happening in the rest of the country. Got to study your history or you're doomed to repeat it.
Right. So do you see Cuomo stepping down in the next few weeks?
I don't right now. I mean, I'd be shocked if he actually did. I think he is arrogant enough to think that he survives all this. And I think he's arrogant enough to think that he could actually run again. So that's going to be kind of entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I love watching Biden say that he might be prosecuted, and he has his own skeletons in the closet with harassment. And, it's amazing, they went after, Kavanaugh and everything with such vengeance. And I love when they eat themselves up. They expose themselves. It's hypocritical. All right. So Ari Hoffman from the Post Millennial, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I hope I can have you back as these issues heat up, all right?
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, everybody, that was Ari Hoffman. He's exposed a lot of the conditions in Seattle, their lockdown policies and their double standards with their progressive leftist policies that predated COVID. This is the problem with this country, is that on all these blue states, they were already moving way to the left, and the red states were doing better economically, and they were attracting people. There was already an exodus from California and Washington and, New York especially. And, now it's come home to roost, and with the COVID acceleration of these job losses and everything, people are leaving in record numbers. And what's going on in this economy with hyperinflation from these lockdowns and stuff too, lumber's up 50%, 100%, 170% in places. These builders are getting killed, and these towns are taking their time giving approvals because of COVID excuses. And so think about the time that passed since you applied for a permit and then the time you got it. Construction costs went up 30%. This is David Zere. When we come back, we have Catalina Loft running for Congress in Illinois. Thank you for joining us.